Okay, so this is my presentation for the third discovery project, Making Mayan Hot Chocolate, where I researched ancient Maya hot cocoa rituals and then followed a recipe that tried to mimic the hot cocoa used. Unfortunately, I couldn't put this in full screen. I tried doing it, but every time it just starts getting all glitchy and weird, which is unfortunate, but I'll try to do my best to make sure we can see as much as possible in these. So yeah, so we're going over what these cocoa rituals were. Cocoa was used, and it's still being used for a lot of purposes, temporal purposes and spiritual purposes. It's believed to have medical benefits, but it's also very spiritual. So across Mesoamerican American civilizations, particularly the Maya and then later the Aztecs, cocoa is seen as the food of the gods. Cocoa rituals would be directed by a shaman, so like a religious leader, and multiple people would drink the cocoa at the ceremony as they pass the cup among themselves, kind of like passing it along, sharing the vessel as they pass the cup. Yeah, these ceremonies would be held during times of unrest or change, so like a war or a new leader, like a coronation, just things that you don't know what's going to happen next, but drinking the cocoa, reaching out to the gods, was seen as providing insight and comfort during these events. Drinking cups were used in this ceremony, and that's kind of the art history that I'm looking at. They're very historically and culturally significant. These vessels are made of ceramic, and they're usually heavily decorated, painted, and dyed with bold images and sometimes writing. So we can see some right here. We see a kind of chief figure, or maybe a god, sitting very regally. He's pretty big. There's a bunch of details, patterns, and some over here too. Like this one's very colorful, and there's some figures up here that might be animals or plants, and some stuff going on. They would often depict ceremonial process itself, so here we might be seeing somebody giving the hot cocoa or drinking the cocoa, and sometimes the rulers or divinities with the ritual associated with. So for one of these cups, I think I have a bigger image later on that I could show you, but yeah, that's just the type of thing that would be on these cups. Each cup was different and might have been used for different things, like a cup like drink for war would probably look different it would vary by culture, so that's cool. The recipe I use, so I didn't do a full-on ritual because, that wouldn't be, appropriate, but I did use a recipe to create what is referred to as Mayan hot chocolate. Traditionally, the cocoa would be unsweetened and bitter. I used a modernized recipe that made it sweeter and creamier than Mayan cocoa, and it called for these ingredients. So milk, hot cocoa mix. So the hot cocoa mix kind of serves as the original cocoa powder plus sugar. That's basically all that's in the mix. And then some ground cinnamon, and then a little bit of cayenne pepper, which is spicy. So that's kind of interesting. This is where I found the recipe, and so this was kind of the process. I mixed the dry ingredients, the cocoa, the cinnamon, and the cayenne pepper. I warmed up milk to serve it, so measured out the milk and heated it up in a microwave. And then I mixed, this is spelled wrong, but I mixed dry ingredients with the milk, and that made the cocoa, which is kind of cool. So the taste test, it actually wasn't very spicy. Like I said earlier, it's really bitter tasting and spicy sometimes, kind of has a kick to it, but the recipe I used, I thought it was super bland. I was with family at the time, and they really liked it. Some of them said it was really good or tasty. I didn't. I thought it was bland, but you know, there are lots of different variations of this that I could have tried. It would have been fun to like make multiple recipes, but I didn't have the time. I just did the one, and you know, ones that would have been like more accurate to what the original would have tasted like, ones that were, yeah, but unfortunately couldn't do that. So maybe I would have liked to do that. I think that would have been cool. And then this is my reflection. This experiment's helped me better understand the connection between food and art, especially how they apply to one another in a culture. Food, silverware, and dishes are typically associated with necessity because, you know, you have to eat food to survive, and then having, you know, cups and dishes is kind of this thing we created to sort of go with that. But we can see from the Mayans' cocoa rituals and the decorative vessels that they used, they serve a religious and cultural purpose, and they're very artistic and decorated. So here's that image I was talking about. That's this cup from earlier. Did I just mess up my slides? I did. But this image is the full one. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit to kind of look a little closer at this one. You see, we can see that same figure sitting here. We can see some stuff going on, and there's supposed to be a depiction of cocoa. I'm not seeing it here in this one. I think there were some other ones from the website that had it, but this reflects the ritual. We can see a lot of patterning, and it's very Mayan-like in the carvings or the drawing on the ceramic. It's the same style we see a lot in Mayan culture, so that's cool. It shows us like the fact that they put in the time to decorate this cup. It just shows how important it was, and I think that's really cool. And then here are the sources. So yeah,